Imagine walking across an empty field, unaware that beneath your feet lies evidence of a civilization textbooks once missed. In recent years, especially 2024 and 2025, discoveries have emerged that force scholars to challenge long-standing beliefs about how societies formed, traded, and even defined themselves. This countdown revisits history's most celebrated finds, but also brings in overlooked regions, fresh DNA research, and modern scanning technologies that continue to unlock hidden clues. Each object, site, and burial adds a missing piece to the human story, and it all begins with something that at first looked like a simple corroded fragment. The Antikythera Mechanism, Ancient Greek Computer. Number 35. In 1901, divers searching a Roman shipwreck off the coast of a small Greek island brought up a corroded mass of bronze. At first glance, it looked like little more than debris. However, as the fragments were cleaned and later examined, faint traces of teeth and gears emerged, features no one expected to see in an artifact dating from the 1st century BCE. What surprised scholars was the precision. The gearwork was so fine that it rivaled the internal mechanics of watches made nearly 2,000 years later. This raised a difficult question. How could ancient craftspeople achieve such accuracy in cutting metal long before the methods usually associated with the Middle Ages developed? Careful study showed that the device could track the cycles of planets and the moon, predict eclipses, and even mark the timing of festivals such as the Olympic Games. Its design was compact enough to be portable, making the mechanism unlike anything else from the ancient world. Modern research, including CT scans and imaging work as recent as 2021, revealed even more. Hidden inscriptions provided what appear to be instructions, describing how the device should be set up and used. Experts now believe its functions included calendrical tracking and event planning as much as astronomical calculation, though exactly how it was employed remains debated. The discovery does not provide a clear answer to who designed it, or for what ultimate purpose it was built. What remains unresolved is perhaps the most striking fact of all. We still don't know which ancient workshop mastered this level of gearing, nor why that knowledge seemed to vanish for centuries. That mystery leaves an open gap in history, one that contrasts sharply with another discovery where massive stone structures unexpectedly survived across millennia. Göbekli Tepe, world's oldest temple complex. Number 34. In the dry hills of southeastern Turkey, excavations revealed something few thought possible: monumental stonework created by hunter-gatherers nearly 12,000 years ago. This site, known as Göbekli Tepe, consists of circular enclosures anchored by towering T-shaped pillars cut from limestone bedrock. Some of these stones weigh several tons and rise taller than the people who hauled and raised them without wheels or metal tools. Constructing such a place required organization, planning, and cooperation far beyond what was once thought of mobile foraging groups. Its discovery overturned long-accepted timelines. Historians had assumed that permanent temples and civic centers only appeared after the spread of agriculture. Göbekli Tepe challenged that sequence. Here, ritual gathering appears to have come first, with communal labor possibly contributing to the social conditions that encouraged farming later on. Rather than surplus food creating space for religion, religion itself may have created the pressure for more stable food supplies. The stones themselves hold striking details. Carved reliefs depict wild animals, lions, snakes, vultures, and boars, along with repeating abstract symbols. Archaeologists interpret these not simply as decoration, but as evidence of shared symbolic systems and complex mythologies already present among early peoples. The fact that these carvings required so much effort to produce points to their vital role in ritual or social identity. And intriguing questions remain. Only a fraction of the site has been exposed, while remote sensing indicates additional layers and structures still buried beneath the soil. Each uncovered enclosure suggests more hidden below, waiting to shift our understanding yet again. These earliest shrines show how early communities turned stone into statements of belief, an impulse toward building that would echo in very different forms across the world, even in places where entire armies were crafted from the earth. Terracotta Army, China's underground warriors. Number 33. In 1974, while digging a well near Xi'an, a farmer came across fragments of pottery buried in the soil. What he uncovered turned out to be the first glimpse of one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries of the 20th century, the Terracotta Army, an underground force built to guard the tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. Excavations revealed thousands of life-size soldiers standing in precise formation. Infantry, cavalry, war chariots, and horses were arranged as if ready for battle, displaying a fully organized military system frozen in clay. Each figure is unique, with carefully modeled facial features suggesting that artisans may have drawn inspiration from real individuals. The detail extends to armor, hairstyles, and rank, offering an unparalleled record of Qin military structure. Even though more than 8,000 statues have been uncovered, archaeologists believe these are only part of something much larger. The necropolis is believed to extend far beyond the excavated pits, covering several square kilometers with many chambers still unexplored. Tests also suggest the figures were once brightly painted, though much of the pigment has vanished with centuries underground. These faint traces hint at how visually striking the army must have appeared when newly completed. The Terracotta army reflects not only the immense resources commanded by Qin Shi Huang, but also his preoccupation with authority and eternal protection. Building such a vast force required the labor of tens of thousands and a level of state control rarely matched in the ancient world. Yet despite decades of excavation, enormous sections of the necropolis remain sealed. The sheer scale paired with unanswered questions ensures the site continues to challenge our understanding of ancient ambitions, an enigma that finds echoes in other landscapes where entire cities were hidden from sight for centuries. Machu Picchu, lost city of the Incas. Number 32. High in the Peruvian Andes sits Machu Picchu, the most famous surviving reminder of Inca power. The site remained unknown to the outside world until 1911, when it was brought to wider attention by explorer Hiram Bingham. Perched nearly 8,000 feet above sea level, its terraces, temples, and stone dwellings stretch across a mountain ridge suspended between clouds and forest. Its remote location helped it avoid large-scale Spanish destruction and chronicling, which explains why it survived when so many Andean centers did not. For decades, scholars argued over its purpose. Early interpretations framed it as a fortress, but evidence now points instead to a royal estate of the Inca ruler Pachacuti in the 15th century. Carefully arranged ceremonial plazas and finely worked temples suggest a space tied to both political authority and spiritual practice. Machu Picchu's significance lies less in military defense than in its role as an elite retreat and sacred setting. Among its most remarkable elements are the agricultural terraces that run along the slopes. These carved steps stabilize the steep land while allowing crops to grow in challenging terrain. Linked by stone channels, water was managed with unusual precision, turning a mountainside into a controlled farming system that sustained life at high altitude. Recent non-invasive surveys add fresh intrigue. Scans beneath some structures suggest sealed voids remain, possibly hidden chambers awaiting future exploration. These findings reinforce that only part of Machu Picchu's history has been revealed. Today, the site stands as one of the clearest records of how the Inca balanced architecture, ceremony, and environment in extreme conditions. Its endurance continues to illuminate a civilization at its height, while raising questions that parallel investigations taking place far from the Andes. Sutton ship burial, Anglo-Saxon treasure. Number 31. In 1939, as Europe stood on the edge of war, archaeologists in Suffolk uncovered a burial that reshaped how early medieval Britain was understood. Beneath a grassy mound lay the ghostly imprint of a vast ship, the wooden timbers long decayed but its iron rivets still marking the outline. Measuring over 27 meters in length, it was a vessel large enough for serious sea travel. At its center lay a chamber filled with treasures that revealed the sophistication and reach of Anglo-Saxon society. The burial is widely associated with King Redwold of East Anglia by many scholars, though no remains survive to confirm it. Regardless of identity, the richness of the grave goods demonstrates immense power and prestige. Among the most striking finds was an iron helmet decorated with panels of warriors and animals, alongside sword fittings capped with finely crafted gold pommels. Silver vessels imported from the Byzantine world underscored that Anglo-Saxon elites were far from isolated. They maintained ties stretching into continental trade networks. For generations, the centuries after Rome's withdrawal from Britain had been dismissed as stagnant. Sutton forced a reevaluation. The quality and variety of objects showed that rulers commanded labor, artistry, and international connections. Even the pattern of rivets preserved by the soil offered rare details about early ship design, providing evidence not just of craftsmanship, but of the symbolic role of the ship as a vehicle into the afterlife. Survey work continues to reveal more, with nearby mounds suggesting a broader royal cemetery rather than a single remarkable burial. Sutton demonstrated that unseen complexity can transform how entire eras are understood, a reminder that even markings once overlooked may hold the key to rethinking human history itself. Cave of Altamira, Paleolithic cave paintings. Number 30. In northern Spain, a cave once dismissed as random markings revealed one of the clearest windows into early human imagination. The Cave of Altamira preserves walls and ceilings painted during the Upper Paleolithic, many thousands of years old. Across its surface, herds of bison dominate the imagery, joined by deer, horses, and other animals that once roamed the landscape. Unlike static outlines, the figures are dynamic, arranged to suggest motion and vitality. When the site was first reported in the late 19th century, many experts refused to believe it. Some accuse the discoverers of fakery, arguing that prehistoric people could not possibly have created such advanced art. But when other painted caves were documented across Europe in the following decades, the debate shifted. Altamira's authenticity was confirmed, and with it came the recognition that symbolic creativity belonged to people once thought incapable of it. The technique displayed here is striking. Pigments of ochre, black, and red were layered with intention, and the natural shapes of the rock were used to give animals volume and depth. These methods imbued the creatures with a three-dimensional presence, a level of sophistication no one had expected from this period. Altamira forced the academic world to accept that artistic sophistication was not a late invention, but a fundamental skill of Paleolithic communities. It demonstrated that imagination, communication, and symbolic thought had deep roots in human history. While these painted chambers speak to creativity within natural caves, later cultures would move stone, earth, and light itself into vast constructions that reshaped entire landscapes. Newgrange older than Stonehenge. Number 29. In Ireland's Boyne Valley, a vast grass-covered mound rises above the fields. This is Newgrange, one of Europe's earliest monumental constructions, dating to around 3200 BCE. Built centuries before Stonehenge or the Egyptian pyramids, it appears from the outside as a broad earthen mound. Yet a narrow stone-lined passage runs deep inside, leading to a central chamber whose design demonstrates remarkable planning and precision. The structure's defining feature is its astronomical alignment. At the winter solstice each year, the rising sun shines through a small opening above the entrance, sending a narrow beam of light along the passage until it reaches the hidden chamber. For a few brief minutes, the interior is illuminated, transforming the dark tomb into a perfectly lit chamber. This exact alignment shows that its builders tracked the heavens with care, and its solstice illumination links the monument to ritual calendar activity deeply tied to cycles of death, rebirth, and renewal. Carved into the stones are spirals, chevrons, and complex geometric forms. These abstract motifs echo a symbolic tradition and keep archaeologists debating their meaning, ranging from astronomical patterns to beliefs about life and the afterlife. Though the exact message remains elusive, the carvings underscore the community's capacity for both engineering skill and symbolic creativity. Modern surveys of the surrounding landscape have identified yet more hidden sites, suggesting Newgrange was part of a far-reaching ceremonial complex rather than a single isolated structure. Its scale and sophistication reveal that communities in prehistoric Ireland could orchestrate collective projects on a level once seen as beyond their capabilities. Such monumental architecture speaks to enduring legacies left in stone. Yet in other cases, evidence of the past has survived not as construction, but as the body of a single person, preserved across millennia and carrying secrets of an ancient life. The Iceman Ötzi, 5,300-year-old mummy. Number 28. In 1991, two hikers crossing the Ötztal Alps in Europe spotted what looked like a mountaineer's body emerging from melting ice. What they had found was far older than expected, the remains of a man who had died around 3230 BCE. Soon identified as Ötzi the Iceman, he became one of the best-preserved prehistoric mummies ever examined. His skin, clothing, and tools remained intact, creating a rare record of daily life in the Copper Age. Ötzi's body bore more than 60 tattoos made from soot-based pigment. They were placed on areas such as joints and the spine, suggesting they were possibly related to therapeutic practices rather than simple decoration. His final meals also survived within him. Analysis of his stomach revealed meat, grains, and herbs, showing not only a varied diet but also seasonal knowledge of food sources. His toolkit reflected an advanced world for its time. Most famously, he carried a copper-bladed axe, which forced historians to revise assumptions about how early metalworking had spread through Europe. Along with it were a flint knife, arrows, and a quiver, equipment revealing careful preparation for both hunting and survival. Even his clothing, stitched animal hides and woven grass fibers, demonstrated skilled craftsmanship adapted to harsh alpine conditions. Genetic studies offered yet another layer of insight. They revealed predispositions to diseases such as heart trouble and traced his ancestry back to Mediterranean populations. But his life ended violently. An arrow lodged in his shoulder and evidence of head trauma point to murder, making his discovery one of the earliest preserved crime scenes in history. Decades of study continue to place Ötzi at the center of archaeological research, yet his frozen body represents only one form of preservation. Other investigations rely on technology to uncover what lies sealed inside ancient stone structures. Great Pyramids Hidden Chambers, 2024 discovery. Number 27. In 2024, the Great Pyramid of Giza offered new surprises after decades of scrutiny. Recent muon and subsurface scans, continuing into 2025, detected previously uncharted voids within the monument's massive core. For centuries, scholars assumed nearly all of its internal layout was already documented, but these results challenged that belief. Among the most intriguing findings was a corridor-like void mapped near the king's chamber. Its dimensions suggest extended space within the stone interior, but its purpose remains unclear. Some archaeologists suggest it could be a construction gap left unused, while others hypothesize it was sealed deliberately for ceremonial reasons. Without direct excavation, the role of these voids remains only a matter of informed speculation. Theories about their significance continue to circulate. Some researchers argue that the spaces might once have held ritual objects, now long removed. Others raise the possibility of symbolic chambers meant to reinforce the pyramid's spiritual function rather than serve as burial places. The limited data so far leaves open whether these are structural byproducts of engineering or intentional features tied to ancient religious beliefs. Without excavation, we can't yet know. Are they simple gaps in construction or sealed spaces that carried ritual importance? What is clear is that the pyramid's design is more complex than its familiar corridors and chambers suggest. The discovery of hidden voids within such an extensively studied monument shows that even the most iconic structures can still harbor secrets. That reminder, that time and chance preserve the unknown, frames the importance of another site, where the past didn't hide quietly in stone but was frozen in place by catastrophe. Pompeii, Roman city frozen in time. Number 26. In 79 CE, Mount Vesuvius erupted with devastating force, covering the Roman town of Pompeii beneath thick layers of volcanic ash and pumice. Within hours, entire streets, houses, and gardens disappeared from view. The sudden burial created one of the most complete archaeological records of an ancient city ever found. When excavations began centuries later, archaeologists uncovered intact neighborhoods where the details of daily life had been preserved. Simple objects remained where they had been left, bowls and cups still on tables, food counters stocked with goods, and tools resting in workshops. Most haunting were the plaster casts formed from voids left in the hardened ash. These revealed the final outlines of people and animals, caught in mid-motion, their forms surviving after nearly 2,000 years. Pompeii also offered a rare view of Roman society from the inside. Graffiti scratched into walls revealed jokes, insults, and political appeals, showing voices otherwise missing from formal monuments. Painted murals and floor mosaics depicted myths, banquets, and everyday activities, allowing Roman art to be studied well beyond imperial centers. Such details provided a clearer picture of how ordinary citizens lived and interacted in an urban setting. Recent work has added yet more depth. Excavations in 2024 exposed rooms sealed since antiquity, their frescoes still showing vivid color. Advances in ancient DNA studies also revealed that some victims found together were not family members, challenging assumptions about household structures and suggesting more complex social ties within the city. Pompeii remains one of the most vivid examples of history halted in an instant. Yet not every survival from antiquity comes from destruction. Some were safeguarded quietly in jars, left untouched for centuries until rediscovered in a very different landscape. Dead Sea Scrolls, ancient biblical texts. Number 25. In the late 1940s, a young shepherd searching near the cliffs of Qumran stumbled into caves holding clay jars sealed for millennia. Inside were parchment and papyrus manuscripts hidden away more than 2,000 years earlier. These writings, now known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, quickly became one of the most significant archaeological finds of the century, offering scholars a direct connection to Judaism between the last centuries BCE and the early Roman period. The scrolls contained a wide range of material. Portions of the Hebrew Bible preserved some of the oldest surviving versions of familiar texts. Alongside them were writings particular to the community that stored them, rules of conduct, prayers, and visionary works describing a world on the brink of transformation. Central to some of these was the figure often called the teacher of righteousness, a leader described in ways that helped define the group's identity and beliefs. Together, these manuscripts made clear that Jewish scripture and tradition were far from fixed, but rather part of a diverse, evolving landscape that later shaped both Judaism and early Christianity. Their preservation owed much to the dry desert caves, which shielded the documents from decay. Even so, many were fragmentary. Modern technologies continue to refine what can be read. Multispectral imaging has revealed letters invisible to the naked eye, allowing researchers to restore words and sometimes entire passages once presumed lost. More fragments have also been identified in recent years, adding unexpected texts to the collection and broadening the scope of what is known about this period. The Dead Sea Scrolls remain a cornerstone for understanding ancient religion and culture. Yet while fragile manuscripts endured through time, other discoveries have survived in dazzling splendor, created not from ink and parchment, but from gold prepared for a royal burial. Tutankhamun's tomb, Pharaoh's golden burial. Number 24. In 1922, after years of searching in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, British archaeologist Howard Carter uncovered the sealed tomb of Tutankhamun, a young pharaoh of the 18th dynasty who had ruled during his teenage years. Robbers may have entered soon after the burial, but a remarkable quantity of objects still remained when Carter located the tomb over 3,000 years later. The find astonished the archaeological world. 4 nested gilded shrines enclosed the sarcophagus, each fitted inside the next to guard the pharaoh's body. Surrounding them, the burial chamber and adjoining rooms were packed with items intended for use in the afterlife. Chariots, thrones, statues, and finely worked jewelry filled nearly every available space. The enormous cache of objects, largely of gold or inlaid with precious stones, demonstrated both the material power of Egypt's royal court and the religious importance of equipping a king for eternity. At the center was the artifact that came to symbolize the entire discovery, Tutankhamun's solid gold funerary mask. Inlaid with lapis lazuli, quartz, and glass, it remains one of the most familiar images of antiquity. Its craftsmanship reflects the extraordinary skill of artisans working in the New Kingdom, and each detail underscores the importance of permanence and identity in Egyptian burial practice. Objects ranging from ceremonial daggers to carved ivory boxes continue to provide insight into everyday life, royal symbolism, and international connections of the period. More recent scientific studies have added another dimension. CT and genetic analyses suggest that Tutankhamun suffered from health issues and that he died at a young age. Though his reign was brief, the survival of his tomb reshaped Egyptology. It provided an unparalleled record of royal burial customs and elevated Tutankhamun from a relatively minor ruler to one of the most recognized figures of ancient history, a reminder of how much the written and visual legacies of Egypt still had to reveal. Rosetta Stone key to Egyptian hieroglyphs. Number 23. While treasures like Tutankhamun's tomb revealed the wealth of Egyptian kings, another discovery provided a different kind of key, the one that made their voices legible again. For centuries, hieroglyphs carved into temples and tombs were visible but indecipherable, their meanings lost to time. That silence ended in 1799, when French soldiers near the town of Rosetta uncovered a dark granodiorite slab bearing the same decree written in 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphs. The decree itself outlined royal orders, but its real value lay in the trilingual format. Because ancient Greek was understood, scholars suddenly had a comparative tool to begin unlocking Egypt's lost language. The breakthrough came in 1822 when Jean-François Champollion demonstrated that hieroglyphs were not just decorative symbols, but a system combining phonetic signs with logographic ones. His insight opened the way to translating entire inscriptions after centuries of silence. The results were transformative. Walls once regarded as purely ornamental could now be read as texts, prayers to gods, hymns for the dead, records of law, and accounts of royal decrees. What had seemed like frozen imagery became active history, restoring the words of pharaohs, officials, and priests across more than 2 millennia. Egypt went from mute stone to a civilization that could be read in its own words. The Rosetta Stone also changed the discipline of archaeology. It showed that comparative linguistics could revive long-lost languages, strengthening Egyptology as a serious scholarly field. Without this single artifact, vast stories of Egypt's culture, religion, and politics would still remain closed. It proved that seemingly simple surfaces could carry meaning hidden in plain sight. A reminder echoed in discoveries where images on rock and pigment carry messages from even earlier human worlds. Lascaux Cave Paintings Prehistoric Art Gallery. Number 22. In 1940, 4 teenagers exploring the countryside near Montignac in southwestern France stumbled into a cave that revealed one of the most extraordinary records of prehistoric art ever found. With only a lamp to guide them, they entered chambers where walls and ceilings carried paintings created circa 17,000 years ago. Known today as the Lascaux Caves, the site preserved a vivid gallery of Upper Paleolithic expression hidden away in darkness. The paintings at Lascaux are remarkable for their scale and lifelike quality. Massive bulls stretch across panels, while horses appear in dynamic movement, carefully proportioned and shaded. The artists used mineral pigments applied with brushes, blowing tubes, and their own hands, showing control not just of technique but of design. Many figures were placed to follow the rock's natural curves, which gave depth and 3-dimensional volume to the animals. Some panels show layers from repeated visits across generations, suggesting the cave was a sustained site of creative and ritual activity. These works reveal sophisticated observation skills. The attention to anatomy, perspective, and motion suggests that the people who painted here were not only skilled artists, but also interpreters of the natural world around them. Far from being simple decoration, the cave's imagery demonstrates shared cultural knowledge and symbolic intent at a scale unseen elsewhere in Europe at that time. After the site became widely accessible in the mid-20th century, exposure to human traffic and artificial lighting encouraged harmful mold and carbonate deposits. To protect the paintings, authorities closed the cave to the public. In its place, replicas such as Lascaux II now allow visitors to experience the art while ensuring the originals remain preserved. What Lascaux demonstrates is that even the distant past can survive in astonishing detail, a reminder that stories once dismissed as myth or imagination may carry enduring traces of truth. Troy, Homer's legendary city found. Number 21. For centuries, Troy was known primarily through Homer's epics, treated as a stage of legend rather than a verifiable city. That perception began to change in the late 19th century when excavations at Hisarlik in modern Turkey uncovered the remains of a substantial ancient settlement. Archaeologists revealed layer upon layer of occupation, showing that the site had been rebuilt repeatedly across thousands of years. Among the ruins stood fortification walls, towers, and gates, with striking resemblances to the descriptions preserved in the poems. The archaeological sequence at Hisarlik showed at least 9 major phases of urban development. Each level reflected shifts in architecture and power, and some bore the traces of violent destruction before the city was re-established once more. Scholars continue to debate which layer, if any, overlaps with the world described by Homer. Still, evidence of fire, collapsed defenses, and abrupt abandonment makes clear that periods of conflict were integral to Troy's history. Artifacts provided further insight into its scope and significance. Weapons, imported pottery, and evidence of trade linked the city not only to the Aegean, but also to broader networks stretching into the Near East. Troy's position overlooking the Dardanelles gave it control over vital passages between the Aegean and the Black Sea, a strategic factor that may explain its frequent battles and resurgences. Today, most scholars widely agree Hisarlik is the likely site of Homeric Troy, though details of the epic, such as the famous wooden horse, remain unresolved. The excavations transformed a story once considered pure myth into a place with tangible remains, illustrating how literature, legend, and archaeology can intersect. The rediscovery of Troy demonstrated how human ambition reshaped landscapes into enduring monuments, a theme that echoes again in a different corner of the world, where a vast temple complex still rises above the forests of Southeast Asia. Angkor Wat, Cambodia's temple complex. Number 20. Angkor Wat rises at the center of Cambodia as the largest religious monument in the world. Built in the early 12th century under King Suryavarman II, the complex was originally dedicated to Vishnu before later becoming a Buddhist center, a role it continues today. Covering more than 160 hectares, its central temple is crowned with sandstone towers arranged to represent Mount Meru, the sacred peak of Hindu belief. The scale and precision of Angkor Wat marked the height of Khmer engineering. Thousands of sandstone blocks were quarried, carved, and transported into place with accuracy that still baffles modern engineers. Along its walls run hundreds of meters of ornate bas-reliefs showing gods, myths, battles, and royal processions. These images preserve stories of Khmer cosmology while also broadcasting the empire's political identity in stone. Research has revealed that Angkor Wat belonged to a much larger system than the eye first perceives. LiDAR mapping showed extensive urban infrastructure and water management stretching into the surrounding landscape. Roads, reservoirs, and canals supported a vast population, ensuring that agriculture could endure both monsoons and drought cycles. Taken together, the carvings, temples, and irrigation works document not just a religious site, but a highly coordinated urban system. Even as the Khmer Empire declined in the 15th century, Angkor Wat was never fully abandoned. Monastic communities kept its traditions alive, protecting the temple from the complete collapse experienced elsewhere in the city. Today it stands as evidence of how engineering, urban planning, and hydraulic control were combined in a way that sustained one of the largest pre-modern populations on Earth. Its endurance illustrates how human societies create monuments far beyond individual lifetimes, though in other places, the remnants of ancestral devotion survive not as vast cities, but as single statues raised from isolated landscapes. Easter Island Moai Mysterious Stone Heads. Number 19. In the remote reaches of the Pacific lies Easter Island or Rapa Nui. Across its slopes and coastal plains stand hundreds of immense stone figures, their faces turned inland as if watching over the land. These sculptures, known as moai, were carved between the 14th and 17th centuries by the Rapa Nui people. While often referred to as heads, many are in fact full statues with torsos that over centuries became buried beneath the earth. The moai were not made as decoration, but as representations of revered ancestors, projecting authority and spiritual power over the communities that created them. Some reach 10 meters in height and weigh dozens of tons, achievements made without the use of wheels or draft animals. Their creation required not only specialized stoneworking skills, but also careful coordination within a society that had limited resources. Scholars believe the statues were transported upright using ropes and group effort, a feat that continues to impress researchers today. The story of the Moai is also tied to the story of Rapa Nui's fragile environment. The island was once covered in forest, but over the centuries the landscape changed dramatically. Deforestation has been linked to human activity and possibly the impact of introduced rats, leaving behind drastically reduced resources. This ecological shift is believed to have influenced the island's population and social structures, though discussion continues on how statue building factored into the broader changes. Even now, questions remain unresolved. How coordinated were the rituals surrounding Moai construction, and how did such an isolated community organize projects on this scale? That question still drives research, reminding us that the mysteries of the human past stretch back far earlier, onto walls where the very first symbolic art was recorded. Chauvet Cave, oldest known cave art. Number 18. In 1994, a small group of explorers entered a cave in southern France that had been sealed for tens of thousands of years. Inside, they found walls covered with paintings now known as the Chauvet Cave artworks. Radiocarbon dating placed them at over 30,000 years old, making them substantially older than several other famed painted caves in Europe. Their age alone was striking, but what caught scholars' attention even more was the sophistication of the art itself. The artists of Chauvet employed techniques far beyond simple outlines. They used shading, contouring, and overlapping figures to create convincing depth and a sense of movement, qualities that seemed more in line with much later traditions. Large predatory animals such as lions and rhinoceroses appeared beside herds of bison, horses, and mammoths, species that roamed Ice Age Europe but vanished long ago from the region. These depictions suggest the artists were recording direct encounters, not stories passed second-hand. The state of preservation added to its significance. A natural collapse had sealed the entrance thousands of years earlier, keeping the chambers untouched until modern entry. As a result, pigments, lines, and even subtle details survived with sharp clarity, offering what many have described as a time capsule of early symbolic expression. Entering the site was like gaining access to a record kept intact since the Paleolithic. Chauvet forced a revision of long-held ideas. Symbolic communication and aesthetic achievement were clearly present far earlier than once believed. The cave is now considered one of the earliest known masterpieces of human creativity, shifting timelines for when complex cultural behaviors emerged. While Chauvet preserved visions of a vanished world hidden deep within stone, other discoveries would emerge from places where the past lay submerged, waiting beneath the sea. The Antikythera shipwreck, ancient luxury vessel. Number 17. Off the Greek island of Antikythera, a shipwreck first discovered in 1900 has continued to alter how we understand trade in the ancient Mediterranean. Though it is best remembered for yielding the Antikythera Mechanism, the same wreck also contained an extraordinary cargo of statues, jewelry, and fine goods that point to the scale of exchange between Greece and Rome during the 1st century BCE. The vessel appears to have been carrying luxury items intended for wealthy Roman patrons. Amphorae, rare glass vessels, marble sculptures, and bronze statues were all present among the remains. The preservation of bronze works was especially unusual, since such pieces were often melted down in antiquity. Their survival here was a direct result of the ship's sudden sinking. Together with the mechanism, these finds highlight both advanced craftsmanship and the appetite of Roman elites for imported art and technology. Over the decades, marine archaeologists have returned to the site many times. Recovery operations brought up fragments of sculpture, pieces of furniture, and delicate ornaments, gradually building a picture of a ship that was more than a simple cargo carrier. The range and quality of its contents suggest it was moving a shipment that functioned as a showcase of wealth, bridging Greek artistry with Roman demand. In recent seasons, divers even reported the presence of armor pieces, raising the possibility that guards or soldiers accompanied the voyage to protect such valuable goods. The Antikythera wreck remains one of the richest underwater archaeological sites ever studied, with much of it still buried beneath sediment. It underscores how the sea preserved objects that would have vanished on land, offering a rare glimpse into elite trade networks of the ancient world. Yet while this vessel carried treasures for the few, other forgotten landscapes reveal how entire populations built centers of power on a monumental scale. Cahokia, North America's forgotten metropolis. Number 16. In present-day Illinois, just across the river from St. Louis lies Cahokia, a city few outside archaeology recognize, yet it was once the largest urban center north of Mexico before European contact. Beginning around 1050 CE, the Mississippian culture developed it into a planned settlement that grew to support tens of thousands of people at its height. What remains today are vast earthen mounds rising from the plains, but in their time they created a skyline unmatched anywhere else in North America. At its core stood Monk's Mound, the largest earthwork built in the Americas before modern times. Rising more than 30 meters, it once supported a massive structure used for political or ceremonial purposes. Around it spread broad plazas that hosted rituals, markets, and communal gatherings, evidence of coordination on a scale demanding both organization and leadership. The layout itself points to a governing system capable of directing monumental labor and maintaining food supplies for a sprawling population. Cahokia's reach extended far beyond its boundaries. Archaeologists have found artifacts from distant regions, seashells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, that confirm the city was a hub in continent-wide trade networks. At its height, it rivaled or even exceeded many medieval European towns in population, proof that large, complex societies thrived in North America long before Europeans arrived. By the mid-14th century, however, Cahokia entered decline. Research suggests a combination of environmental pressures and social factors contributed. Changing climate, resource strain, and internal challenges all appear in the record. Abandoned, the site left behind its imposing mounds as the only surviving witness to what was once a metropolis. Cahokia reminds us that history often hides powerful chapters in unexpected landscapes, and that our understanding of the human story continues to expand with each discovery. The Denisova Cave, new human species discovery. Number 15. Deep in the Altai Mountains of Siberia, a small chamber inside Denisova Cave revealed evidence that changed how scientists view human evolution. In 2008, researchers analyzing a tiny finger bone discovered it did not belong to Neanderthals or modern humans. DNA sequencing showed it came from a previously unidentified group of hominins, now known as the Denisovans. The find confirmed that during the late Pleistocene, multiple distinct human lineages shared the Earth. Excavations at Denisova Cave continue to build the picture. Archaeologists recovered stone tools, animal tooth beads, and ornaments crafted with care. These artifacts indicate complex behavior and symbolic practice, suggesting the Denisovans created objects that carried cultural and social meaning. Far from being a simple shelter, the cave provides one of the earliest records of material traditions among this overlooked branch of humankind. Perhaps the most compelling discoveries involve genetic connections. A bone fragment uncovered in the cave proved to come from a hybrid individual with both Neanderthal and Denisovan ancestry. Subsequent genetic studies showed that Denisovans interbred not only with Neanderthals but also with early modern humans. As a result, Denisovan DNA survives today in the genomes of many people, particularly in Asia and Oceania. One sequence even contributed to the ability of certain Himalayan populations to thrive at high altitudes, a direct legacy of this ancient lineage. In 2024, new DNA extracted from sediments provided further insights into how Denisovans endured Siberia's extreme conditions. The cave's deposits, layered over tens of millennia, preserve an unparalleled record of interaction among human species. Each fragment of bone or sediment reveals a chapter in an evolutionary story more entangled than once imagined. From this hidden chamber in Siberia, the focus shifts to another place where everyday life thousands of years ago was preserved with equal clarity, etched not into genetics but into stone houses left standing on windswept coasts. Skara Brae, Europe's best-preserved Neolithic village. Number 14. On the Orkney Islands of Scotland, shifting sands in the mid-19th century exposed the remains of a long-hidden village now known as Skara Brae. Dating to around 3100 BCE, it is older than most Egyptian pyramids and stands as one of Europe's best-preserved Neolithic settlements. What sets Skara Brae apart is how much of its domestic life survives. Each stone house still contains built-in features: box-like beds tucked along the walls, central hearths for cooking and heat, and storage recesses carved directly into the stone. Some dwellings even reveal entryways through rooftops and burials placed beneath floors, tying everyday living spaces closely to ritual practice. These details allow archaeologists to see not just how the community built, but also how they organized social and family life. The homes were linked by covered passageways, which shielded inhabitants from North Atlantic winds and formed a network of shared spaces. With thick, partially sunken stone walls providing natural insulation, the village demonstrated careful adaptation to the harsh island environment. This construction style has allowed the houses to endure for over 5 millennia, offering a direct view of how farming people in Northern Europe managed survival. Small artifacts embedded in the settlement add depth to this picture. Carved pins, beads, pottery fragments, and tools reflect practical needs along with symbolic or decorative expression. They suggest that even in a small, remote community, people were engaged in traditions of craft, ornament, and cultural meaning. Why Skara Brae was suddenly abandoned remains uncertain. Shifts in climate or diminishing resources have been proposed, but no definitive explanation exists. The unanswered questions give this village an air of unresolved mystery, a reminder that much about ancient lives remains hidden until chance or persistence brings it back into view. The Staffordshire Hoard Anglo-Saxon Gold Treasure. Number 13. In 2009, a man exploring farmland in Staffordshire, England with a metal detector came across a collection of gold objects that quickly drew archaeological attention. Excavations revealed the Staffordshire Hoard, the largest cache of Anglo-Saxon gold and silver ever recorded. More than 3,500 pieces were eventually catalogued, many broken or fragmentary, yet together they form the richest glimpse we have into elite warrior culture of the 7th century. The hoard was overwhelmingly martial. Fragments of sword hilts, cross-shaped fittings, and intricately decorated pommels dominated the find, most once belonging to weapons of high-ranking warriors or noble patrons. Some objects combined gold with garnet inlays arranged in sharp geometric patterns, demonstrating craftsmanship of exceptional quality. Christian symbols were also part of the mix, reflecting how religious and martial life were already deeply intertwined in early medieval England. Archaeologists noted that many items showed deliberate breaking before burial. This has led to two leading interpretations. The collection may represent spoils of conflict taken from rival leaders, or it could mark a ritual deposition, in which treasures were offered for spiritual or political reasons. Either way, the hoard points to a society where warfare, wealth, and belief were completely inseparable. The discovery also forced scholars to reconsider long-held assumptions about the early Anglo-Saxon world. Far from being isolated or unsophisticated, the presence of such fine workmanship and precious materials shows active networks of trade, skilled artisanship, and a ruling class invested in projecting power. The burial of so much treasure suggests a society in flux, one where control, loyalty, and faith were contested and displayed through objects of gold. What makes the Staffordshire Hoard remarkable is not only its scale, but also its impact. It reshaped how historians view an entire age. And while it illuminated the lives of warriors and kings, another excavation in England would reveal the lost resting place of one king in particular, hidden in an unlikely setting. Richard III's grave, king under a parking lot. Number 12. In 2012, excavations in central Leicester, England, began in an unremarkable spot beneath a city parking lot. What emerged was the discovery of a skeleton, its context and characteristics suggesting it was far from an ordinary burial. The spine showed a pronounced curve echoing descriptions of a king depicted by contemporaries as physically deformed. The remains also bore injuries consistent with death in combat, sharp force trauma to the skull, along with other wounds suggesting multiple strikes. Unlike the elaborate treatment expected for royalty, the body had been placed hastily in a shallow, unmarked grave. This stark contrast between status in life and treatment in death carried immediate historical resonance. To establish the identity, researchers turned to modern science. Mitochondrial DNA was extracted from the skeleton and compared to samples from living descendants of Richard III's maternal line. The genetic link, combined with radiocarbon dating and the distinctive physical features, confirmed the remains as those of the last Plantagenet king. Richard III had died at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, closing the Wars of the Roses and marking one of the most famous royal deaths in English history. The confirmation settled a mystery that had persisted for over 5 centuries. It also underscored how archaeological methods combined with genetics can clarify historical debates once presumed unsolvable. In 2015, Richard III was formally reburied at Leicester Cathedral, complete with honors befitting a monarch. The event represented not only closure for historians, but also a rare instance in which archaeology directly altered public commemoration of the past. This moment demonstrated how remains can carry echoes across centuries. Yet other finds show how even objects, long submerged and buried, can hold the story of exchanges linking cultures thousands of years before kings like Richard ever reigned. The Uluburun Shipwreck, Bronze Age International Trade. Number 11. Off the southern coast of Turkey lies the Uluburun Shipwreck, one of the most important maritime discoveries ever made. Dating to the 14th century BCE, the vessel sank during the height of the Bronze Age, taking with it a cargo that reflected the reach of an international trading system already in place more than 3 millennia ago. Unlike most ancient wrecks, which leave only scattered remains, this one preserved a diverse range of materials that revealed a network far wider than a single voyage. At the heart of the cargo were more than 10 tons of copper ingots, stacked in distinctive oxide shapes. Alongside them were ingots of tin from distant sources, the key element that, together with copper, produced bronze. These raw materials underscored how interconnected communities were, supplying essential metals across vast distances. The ship also carried jars of resin, fragments of glass, and luxury materials like ivory and ostrich eggshells, pointing to trade in both utilitarian goods and items prized by elites. The diversity of origins stood out. Baltic amber, faience beads resembling Egyptian styles, and finely worked ornaments showed that the Mediterranean world was far from isolated. Instead, the wreck revealed exchanges stretching across Europe, Africa, and Asia during an era often thought less connected. The Uluburun cargo provided a map of relationships held together by shared demand for metals, art, and prestige items. Recent survey teams continue to examine sections of cargo still covered by sediment, suggesting the site holds more information yet to be uncovered. The Uluburun remains silent on the seabed, but its collection of goods illustrates the vast networks that existed long before classical empires rose, networks that remind us just how deep the roots of human exchange truly run. Yet trade alone does not define our past. Other discoveries take us far earlier into the record of our own species, when the question was not commerce but survival and the first steps toward becoming human. Lucy, our 3.2 million-year-old ancestor. Number 10. In 1974, a team working in Ethiopia's Afar region uncovered fragments of a skeleton that quickly became one of the most influential discoveries in paleoanthropology. The remains were named Lucy, and analysis revealed she belonged to Australopithecus afarensis, a species that lived about 3.2 million years ago. Although incomplete, Lucy's skeleton was far more substantial than most fossil finds, which allowed scientists to reconstruct critical details about her anatomy and way of life. The most decisive evidence lay in her hips and leg bones, which showed adaptations for upright walking. Lucy is considered a key transitional specimen, proving that bipedalism was established long before the dramatic expansion of brain size or development of advanced tools. This shifted the evolutionary sequence, showing that walking on two legs was one of the earliest hallmarks of humanity, even in small-brained ancestors. Her skull emphasized the contrast in traits. The cranial cavity was close in size to that of chimpanzees, underscoring that while her posture was human-like, her brain remained relatively small. This mix of ape-like and human-like features defined Lucy as a pivotal example of transitional evolution, challenging linear models and replacing them with a more nuanced understanding of branching development. Because her skeleton was uniquely well-preserved, Lucy became central to debates about how many early hominin species coexisted and how their traits overlapped. Later fossil finds, such as the older specimen known as Ardi, added further complexity to this timeline. Yet Lucy remains the benchmark, offering one of the clearest insights into the moment when our ancestors first balanced upright stability with ancestral form. From these ancient bones, the record shifts again, this time to enduring expressions of humanity in metal, crafted with precision and preserved against extraordinary odds. The Antikythera Youth Perfect Bronze Statue. Number 9. From the same shipwreck that yielded the Antikythera Mechanism came another astonishing survival, a full bronze statue now called the Antikythera Youth. Unlike the fragmentary remains typical of ancient bronzes, this figure remained largely intact on the seabed for over 2 millennia. It depicts a young male with proportionate features and balanced posture, a striking example of how Greek sculptors used bronze to capture ideals of beauty and harmony. Many bronzes from antiquity were melted down for reuse, so the preservation of this piece is an extraordinary accident of history. The artistry is evident in every detail. Musculature across the arms and torso shows careful study of anatomy, while the relaxed stance suggests movement rather than rigidity. Bronze casting offered possibilities in realism that marble could not always achieve, and the slight twist of the figure demonstrates the mastery of weight distribution and naturalism central to Hellenistic sculpture. These choices elevated the statue beyond simple representation into a cultural statement about youth, vitality, and perfection. Beyond technical brilliance, the Antikythera Youth reflects broader values. In Greek thought, the physical body was linked closely to moral and civic virtue, and statues like this embodied those ideals in visual form. Its presence aboard the ship reveals much about who commissioned and valued such works, elites who collected art as both status symbols and cultural capital. Transporting bronzes of this scale across the Mediterranean shows how far artisans' products traveled, and the appetite among wealthy patrons for Greek artistry. As one of the rare bronzes to survive in nearly complete form, the Antikythera Youth preserves not just a body in metal, but a vision of human perfection admired across the ancient world. From celebrated art that embodied grandeur, our perspective soon turns to humbler traces of life, small writings that captured the everyday concerns of soldiers posted far from home. Vindolanda tablets, Roman Britain's daily life. Number 8. Near Hadrian's Wall in northern England, archaeologists uncovered thin wooden tablets that had survived nearly 2,000 years against the odds. Unlike stone inscriptions or official proclamations, these carried everyday notes written in ink, opening a rare window into the lives of Roman soldiers and their families living on the empire's northern frontier in the 1st and 2nd centuries CE. One of the most famous examples is a personal invitation to a birthday party, considered the oldest surviving piece of written correspondence in Britain. Other tablets record requests for simple necessities like socks, sandals, and cloaks, small details that capture just how challenging life was in the damp climate far from Rome. A few even mention beer supplies, an unexpectedly down-to-earth concern that illustrates the comforts people longed for while serving in a difficult posting. Taken together, these casual messages provide the kind of human perspective on frontier life that grand monuments rarely preserve. Their preservation was accidental. Waterlogged, oxygen-free soils surrounding the fort of Vindolanda protected the fragile wood, preventing the rapid decay that should have destroyed it within years. This unusual survival allows us to read words that would otherwise have been lost forever, revealing personal voices unheard in other sources. Recent advances have expanded what we can recover from the tablets. Using multispectral scanning, researchers have revealed faded words invisible to the naked eye, recovering entire lines of correspondence missed in early examinations. Each newly legible phrase adds context to how soldiers, traders, and families navigated life at the edge of the Roman world. The Vindolanda tablets remain essential because they humanize an empire often remembered through its armies and emperors. They show that even at Rome's distant margins, people wrote of friendships, obligations, and daily needs, reminders of individual experience. From these personal records, the story shifts to an artifact of a very different kind, one that reflects how ancient communities sought to represent the skies themselves. The Nebra Sky Disk, world's oldest star map. Number 7. In 1999, looters searching near the town of Nebra in central Germany uncovered a bronze disc unlike anything they had seen before. At first, they treated it as little more than an object of value, but once archaeologists examined it, the true importance became clear. Measuring about 30 centimeters in diameter and decorated with inlaid gold, the disc displayed a circular form, a crescent, groups of dots, and later additions of arcs at the edges. This unusual artifact soon became known as the Nebra Sky Disk. Dated to the Bronze Age, around 1600 BCE, or roughly 3,500 years ago, the object is widely regarded as the oldest known representation of the cosmos. Scholars identified the large circle as the Sun, the crescent as the Moon, and a cluster of 7 dots as the Pleiades. Unlike symbolic decoration, the arrangement suggested deliberate sky observation. The disk may have served calendrical or ritual roles, linking celestial patterns to the seasonal cycles that structured Bronze Age life. Further study showed the piece was not static. Over time, its surface was modified, arcs were added, and a gold strip at the base may have represented a horizon or even the symbolic solar boat known in later traditions. These adjustments imply the disk's purpose shifted across generations, possibly evolving from a functional aid to an object of ceremony or belief. Today, the Nebra Sky Disk is considered one of Europe's most iconic archaeological finds. It demonstrates that prehistoric communities were attentive observers of the skies and invested cosmic order with symbolic meaning. From this artifact of celestial knowledge, attention turns back to the ground, toward the remains of one of the earliest large-scale settlements where people experimented with new ways of living together. Çatalhöyük, 9,000-year-old urban settlement. Number 6. In central Turkey lies Çatalhöyük, a site that offers one of the clearest records of how early farming societies organized themselves. First occupied around 7100 BCE, this Neolithic settlement lasted for more than a millennium and at its height supported thousands of people, a scale far beyond most small communities of the period. Its age places it well before many famous ancient monuments such as the Pyramids of Egypt, underscoring how early complex settlement arose. What made Çatalhöyük remarkable was its unusual form. Instead of freestanding houses separated by streets, the community was built as a dense cluster of adjoining dwellings. People reached their homes by climbing through rooftop openings, and movement between spaces often occurred across roofs rather than pathways at ground level. This arrangement turned the entire settlement into a continuous block of homes, reflecting a unique approach to safety, privacy, and daily interaction. Inside those homes, evidence blurred the line between domestic life and symbolic practice. Walls bore painted scenes of hunts and geometric patterns, suggesting shared narrative traditions. Some even appear to depict the surrounding landscape, offering prototypes for cartography. Cooking areas and storage bins stood adjacent to these images, showing that ritual expression and work were interwoven. Beneath the floors, families placed the bodies of their dead, binding ancestry directly to the living space and embedding memory in the heart of each household. The sheer density of construction points to deliberate coordination in food storage, resource management, and communal norms. Sustaining so many people required trust and cooperation, traits reflected in how the settlement was planned and maintained. Like many archaeological sites worldwide, Çatalhöyük now faces environmental threats that highlight the fragile preservation of such ancient legacies. Its story demonstrates how people thousands of years ago could challenge assumptions about community, identity, and the spaces they built. Questions still echoed in later burials that reveal perspectives on roles and identity we are only beginning to understand. The Suantaka warrior, non-binary Viking discovery. Number 5. In 1968, construction workers in Suantaka, Finland, uncovered a grave that immediately raised questions among archaeologists. The burial dated to nearly 1,000 years ago and contained an unusual combination of items. A finely crafted sword lay beside delicate jewelry, and the body appeared to have been dressed in clothing traditionally associated with women. Early interpretations suggested it might be the grave of a high-status female warrior, but the presence of weaponry complicated that conclusion. The find became the subject of debate for decades. Some scholars viewed the mixture of grave goods as symbolic, while others argued it reflected broader roles available to women in early medieval Finland. The picture shifted when modern scientific techniques were applied. DNA analysis revealed that the individual had Klinefelter syndrome, a genetic condition in which a person carries an extra X chromosome, along with a Y. This result added complexity to earlier assumptions, suggesting that the person did not conform neatly to typical male or female categories. What stood out most was the treatment of the burial itself. Far from being ordinary, the grave was rich in materials and carefully arranged, signaling respect and acknowledgement by the community. The combination of martial and ornamental objects seems to indicate that identity and social role were recognized in ways that went beyond rigid classifications. Archaeologists now interpret the burial as evidence that gender expression in this society may have allowed for more nuance than once thought. The Suantaka grave continues to reshape how historians view identity within Viking Age contexts. It highlights how status, symbolism, and community respect could be expressed through burial even when roles did not fit traditional expectations. Discoveries like this remind us that past cultures could embrace diversity, and that different societies left their own remarkable legacies in objects whose meaning still challenges modern interpretations. Sangsingdui Gold Mask, Ancient Chinese Civilization. Number 4. In Sichuan Province, the site of Sangsingdui revealed a collection of objects that challenged traditional views of early Chinese civilization. Among the most remarkable were large gold masks unearthed from sacrificial pits, dating to around 1200 BCE. Their wide eyes, exaggerated features, and unfamiliar proportions stood in stark contrast to the artistic styles of the Shang dynasty that dominated elsewhere at the time. Instead, they pointed to a powerful regional culture that had left little trace in written history. These masks were not everyday ornaments, but high-purity gold pieces created for ceremonial use. Their scale and intricate construction suggest they embodied more than human likeness, possibly ancestral figures or spiritual beings central to Sangsingdui belief. Their very survival demonstrates that advanced metallurgy was already established here, with artisans mastering complex techniques like smelting, hammering, and gilding centuries before such methods were widely recognized in the region. The discoveries went far beyond the masks. Archaeologists recovered large bronze statues with highly detailed designs, grotesque bronze heads with stylized expressions, and delicately carved ivory and jade artifacts. Each object spoke to a society that placed heavy emphasis on ritual, display, and symbolism. Unlike the standardized designs of the Yellow River dynasties, Sangsingdui's art was distinct in both form and conception, reinforcing that Bronze Age China was culturally diverse rather than uniform. Sangsingdui demonstrates that the story of ancient China cannot be confined to a single heartland tradition. Instead, it reveals a patchwork of advanced regional centers, each with unique beliefs and artistic languages. Even after decades of excavation, much about this culture remains unclear, leaving Sangsingdui as one of archaeology's enduring mysteries and a reminder of how entire traditions can rise alongside better recorded powers. This understanding sets the stage for other discoveries of monumental scale that reframe what high-status burials meant in different parts of the world. The Amphipolis Tomb, Alexander's Era Burial. Number 3. In 2014, excavations in northern Greece brought global attention to Amphipolis, where a massive burial mound concealed one of the largest tombs ever uncovered from the Macedonian world. Dating to the generation after Alexander the Great, the monument stood out immediately for its scale and design. Encircled by a marble wall nearly 500 meters in circumference, Its construction required immense resources and reflected deliberate planning that signaled high political or social importance. Inside, striking features added to the intrigue. Two sculpted sphinxes guarded the entrance, and beyond them, chambers lined with marble displayed elaborate mosaics. One of the most notable scenes depicted the abduction of Persephone, an image deeply tied to themes of death and rebirth in the ancient world. These artistic choices, paired with the tomb scale, indicated that it was not intended for an ordinary burial, but for a figure of status within the Macedonian elite. Speculation followed about who it might commemorate. Some proposed a general from Alexander's campaigns or a member of his extended family, but definitive identification remains unresolved. Human remains recovered from within included several individuals of different ages, and DNA testing was carried out to explore possible relationships. While the results provided some context, they did not settle the question of ownership. Refined dating in 2025 confirmed that the tomb was built shortly after Alexander's death, during the turbulent era when his empire was divided among successors. Even amid political uncertainty, local leaders were commissioning monuments on a monumental scale, ensuring that memory and power were expressed in stone. The Amphipolis tomb highlights how burial practices can reflect shifting identities in moments of transition. Yet while these chambers preserve grandeur tied to elites, other discoveries reveal far earlier struggles over what it meant simply to be human. Homo Naledi, new human species in South Africa. Number 2, in 2013, explorers navigating the Rising Star cave system in South Africa located chambers filled with an unexpected treasure, dozens of hominin skeletons sealed in deep passageways. The remains represented individuals of different ages, unlike any previously documented species. Careful study revealed they belonged to a newly identified branch of humanity, now named Homo Naledi. What made Homo Naledi remarkable was the unusual mix of features preserved in their bones. Their skulls were small, with brain volumes less than half that of modern humans, a trait reminiscent of much earlier hominins. Yet other parts of their anatomy told a different story. Their legs, feet, and pelvis showed clear adaptations for upright walking, while their hands combined curved climbing fingers with strong thumbs capable of fine manipulation. This mosaic of traits suggested they blended ancient characteristics with abilities often considered modern, complicating ideas of a simple evolutionary progression. The presence of so many skeletons in a hidden chamber posed even more difficult questions. The leading interpretation is that the bodies were deliberately placed there, which, if correct, would imply a social practice of intentionally disposing of the dead. Such behavior is usually linked to symbolic thought and ritual action, capacities long associated with larger-brained species. Archaeologists continue to debate this, but the concentration of remains in such an inaccessible space is hard to explain without purposeful activity. Ongoing research continues to examine where Homo Naledi fits within the human family tree. Comparative studies provide clues about their possible relationships to other early humans, but many uncertainties remain. Still, the discovery demonstrates that defining humanity extends beyond brain size alone and includes behaviors expressed through community and cultural practice. Even after their bones challenged assumptions, another very different artifact would soon reveal that ingenuity could also be preserved in gears and inscriptions hidden inside stone. The Antikythera Mechanism's New Secrets, 2025 research. Number 1. Recently, researchers applied advanced high-resolution imaging to the Antikythera mechanism and brought to light inscriptions that had remained unreadable for more than 2,000 years. These faint grooves concealed on corroded fragments were too damaged to interpret in earlier studies. Now, the new results have given scholars clearer guidance on how the device functioned, confirming its role as far more than a curiosity of ancient engineering. Some of the most illuminating passages describe the prediction of eclipses. The mechanism did not simply track lunar and solar cycles. It provided detailed instructions for anticipating when an eclipse would occur and where it fit in the calendar year. This required remarkable accuracy, simulating small variations in the moon's movement through the calculated interactions of its gears. The inscriptions proved that the device captured celestial rhythms with a sophistication unmatched until many centuries later. Equally striking is evidence of its civic uses. Certain texts explicitly linked its dials to festival calendars, including the great Panhellenic gatherings that drew communities together across the Greek world. This combination of eclipse forecasting and festival scheduling showed that the mechanism was both an astronomical instrument and a tool for organizing communal life. It was not crafted solely for private study, but for aligning society with cosmic and cultural cycles. Each new discovery adds to a portrait of extraordinary complexity. What once seemed like an isolated wonder can now be recognized as a machine weaving science, religion, and social practice into one device. More than a century after its recovery beneath the sea, the Antikythera Mechanism continues to dismantle assumptions about technological limits in the ancient world. Its survival reminds us that unexpected finds can transform entire narratives, just as countless other discoveries have already shown. From golden tombs in Egypt to forgotten cities in the Americas, these discoveries reveal how archaeology continually reshapes our view of the past. Each find provided more than objects. They gave insights into how people lived, worshipped, and linked their worlds across time. What once seemed certain shifts whenever a new burial, settlement, or artifact comes to light. The biggest mystery may not be what we've uncovered, but how much remains buried under soil, stone, and sea. That question keeps archaeologists searching. Which of these finds surprised you most? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to see the full countdown.